Crystal technology is the bane of many players' existence in Rise of Kingdoms, and Lilith has figured this out. They are trying to improve the crystal technology. So I thought I'd throw my hat in the ring with a few suggestions about how to improve crystal technology. And at the end of the video, I'll even talk about removing crystal technology entirely, my thoughts around that. But let's start by making crystal technology less painful, shall we? Hello, my friends, and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming, and in this video, I want to present a few very simple ideas for how to make crystal technology less painful. Lilith, you can thank me later for saving Rise of Kingdoms. I mean, I say that tongue-in-cheek because actually Rise of Kingdoms is ranking extremely well in the App Store right now, especially relative to other mobile games, but let's get started on how I would make crystal technology less painful. Number one, I mean, really, there's only so many attack vectors here, right? Number one is reduce the buffs, and I'm going to talk about all the different buffs. Number two is more ways to get crystals. So look, if these buffs are still going to be here, then let's make it so that the gap between pay to win and free to play is smaller by virtue of giving them more crystals to actually get to the same tech level. And then again, at the end, I want to talk about just getting rid of crystals. But first, what if we just cut the buffs in half? Just reduce the buffs by 50% for all combat stuff. So, improved bows 1 does 5% attack. What if at max level it did 2.5% attack? The swift marching one does 5% march speed. At max level, it would instead do 2.5% march speed. The thing is that a whale is still going to buy the crystals, and they're still going to go for every bit of edge that they can, and garrison captains will still feel like they want the most they can possibly get. However, the gap between free-to-play and pay-to-win has now dramatically shrunk in terms of the volumes of stats that are just coming from crystal technology alone. And this can be extended to a number of things, which I think is a very, very big deal, including the all damage at the very end of the tree. But more importantly, perhaps, the march capacity. Man, if you just slash the march capacity, those boosts by 50%, it would be a very big deal because when you max the first level of march capacity, it's 15%. And when you max the second level of march capacity, it's another 35%. I mean, it's a 50% expansion. Bro, that's a lot of extra troops. And by the way, I can tell you, it's very harrowing running around the field with lots of troops. You're constantly worried about, is your hospital going to overflow? This actually makes a number of things kind of imbalanced, having so many darn troops. I'll talk about that in just a second. But just evaluating my proposal overall, cut all the combat stats in half. That makes fights less punishing for free-to-play. That makes the gap between a low spender and a high spender garrison or rally much lower. More people can do more parts of the game, which should be more fun for people, right? Also, and by the way, that is less pressure on whales to be on constantly running the garrison or the rally because they have more stats. And then the march size reduction actually is maybe the most important thing, and credit where credit is due. That was actually Cortex's idea. It would fix the end game balance of swarming flags. Now, for those of you that haven't experienced this, when you are in a flag and your capacity is just 2 million, you can have a total of 12 things hitting that flag at the same time. Anything else is just going to run in a circle around it. So if an enemy has a rally, which has 2 million capacity, the same, by the way, as your garrison, and they have 11 marches at 430,000 troops or more, that is 6.73 million troops attacking into 2 million troops. It's just very hard to save any garrison in the game when you're getting swarmed that much. And I've experienced this. You either have field control or you are going to get pwned big time. And by the way, the swarmers will even trade either even or positive, even though it's technically 430,000 per march hitting 2 million. They will trade positive because there's just so many debuffs and the people that are in here can't fill it. They can't keep it packed with troops, and the trades just get actually shockingly good for the swarmers. That meta is rough. It's really rough at the end of KVK. If you cut that number in half, okay, you cut the march capacity boost by 50% from what they are, you're still getting a 25% march capacity boost. That's meaningful. However, A, the gap between free-to-play and pay-to-win in the field is greatly improved, and B, now we're talking about 6.18 million troops swarming a garrison versus the 2 million in the garrison. Might not sound like a lot, but it actually is a really big deal for reducing the extent to which garrison swarming is just super, super strong. And I think that's probably a good thing because it's still strong enough that you would do it, but not so OP that you like can't defend anything, which is the case now, which is kind of rough. So I think those will be some really great changes, but I'm not done yet. Oh, you think I was done with Crystal Tech? I ain't done yet, man. Because I would take this healing ability, Special Medicine, and the other Special Medicine ability, and I would chop them off from where they are and put them in a separate tree right at the start. Right at the start. If you want to reduce your healing cost, and that's the first thing you do, I think you should be able to do it, man. Please don't make me farm up so many resources. I'm going to talk about why this is actually beneficial for like a number of reasons. And for the health of the game, this would be a super win. A super win, in my opinion. And I did not stutter there. It would be a big deal. So first of all, relocating it would give you a choice of what you want to invest in. Is it more combat stats? Or is it just like, hey, reduced healing cost so that you can fight for longer? That's another way to be able to fight for longer. More stats or reduced healing cost. And being able to play the game longer and have more fun is just straight upside, right? But the most important thing is that it actually shifts the balance from resources to speed ups being more important, ever so slightly. Because if everybody has less healing cost in terms of the amount of resources you need, you still have to have speed ups to be able to heal those darn troops. And like, maybe they could add a technology for a speed up cost reduction? That, man, I think I'm asking for way too much there. That is asking for way too much. But here's why shifting the balance of importance slightly away from resources by pulling that forward in the tree and towards speed ups is really good. Because let's be frank for a moment. Let's be honest. Resource selling is so bad for this game. But it is the meta. I mean, like, if you could have endless resources by spending a fraction of the money that you would spend in game, like, people do it, man. They buy resources from player sellers, and like, there's a chance you get banned, but also like Lilith's in a tough spot because are they going to ban somebody who's spending money in the game? Like, probably not. So you've got these whales that are like stocking up on huge amounts of resources at a fraction of the cost that it would take to, you know, buy them from the in-game store, which, by the way, if they were buying them from the in-game store, it would also benefit the players of the game because, like, then the development of the game is continued to be funded. So all that to say, right, if you just shift the balance ever so slightly from resources are important to actually speed-ups are more important, you can't actually buy speed-ups from a speed-up farmer in the way that you could buy resources from a resource farmer. And I also think that this would take away from some of the grindy aspect of the game, because I get that economy is important. In fact, I really understand how important economy is for a kingdom, which is why we are like gunning those barb forts constantly. But I think that shifting that focus away from that grindy resource aspect and more into the everybody's in the field for longer having fun is just a super win all the way around, with a low-key attack on resource selling, making speed-ups more relevant, so maybe spenders will just buy that instead because they can't buy that from a speed-up seller. It doesn't exist. It's not a thing. And the last time that Rise of Kingdoms tried to address resource selling, like, they just tried to cut transferring of resources, which was so undesirable that they were like, well, okay, we got to pump the brakes because people are really hating this. And, like, that means it was really, 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 really vocal that y'all conveyed your point such that Lilith was like, okay, pump the brakes, changing our plans. We're not going to do that. So this is just a win on so many levels if they were to pull it forward to the front of the tree and make it accessible to everybody, especially the people that, like, if you don't have all the other tech, then you're really going to want to have a reduced healing cost, right? So there is one other angle here to fix tech, besides cutting all the stats, which I'm saying cut them in half, and besides relocating healing, which fixes a number of things for the game. But the other angle of attack here is to make it so there are more ways to get crystals, which seems pretty straightforward. And even the developers are like, hey, we're adding a Cow Karaku event or whatever it was called to get more crystals. This is good, but I think that it will be kind of exciting, right? If you're not going to get rid of crystal tech, which I don't think they are. I'm going to talk about it at the end. why that's the case. To make it such that actually all players max crystal tech in KVK, it's just a question of when. See what I'm saying? All players max the crystal tech, but what you buy is early access. And whales will still buy that because they want access to all that stuff as fast as they can get it. But everybody else can just get there in a little bit more time, right? And that's often what you're trading in free-to-play games is you pay money for time reduction or some advancement that would have taken time that you could have got otherwise. That, I think, would be good if all players, let's say, at some point after Kingsland is opened, if all players could have max tech, fully free to play, you could have max tech, like that would close the gap too, right? And it closes the gap between free to play and pay to win in a way that, again, doesn't close out all the spending, which is like obviously very important to Lilith and is why they can't just get rid of crystal tech entirely, which I suppose now is the time to really talk about why it is, I think, unfortunately, Lilith will basically never get rid of crystal tech. And the reason, and this is just like, look, I'm not a CEO. I don't know what this is like, but can you imagine if they just like sort of snapped their fingers and got rid of all crystal tech tomorrow, being the CEO of the company and having to go to your board of directors and say, hey, so, you know, I know we were making all this money and now we're making, 20% less. Our revenue dropped by 20%. I'm just guessing how much of the revenue is crystal tech, but like that CEO is fired. They're gone, right? So if you are working at this company, this is what's working against us for getting rid of crystal tech. If you are working at a company, like you can't just cut your source of revenue without having like a major justification or some other thing that like that improves your revenue position. Do you see what I'm saying? I'm not explaining this well, am I? What I'm trying to say is like there needs to be something else, some way that they're still making money, or all the people who made that decision are getting fired, just straight up, right? And the game is doing well. And I mention that because if the game was not doing well, then there would probably be more of an argument to say, let's get rid of crystal tech, because they would be looking and saying, oh, everybody quits because of crystal tech. I guess we need to get rid of it. That's not the case. And there are players that quit over it. Don't, let me be really clear. And I think the reason that Lilith is now looking at it is they're saying, the rate of players quitting plus the rate of players avoiding playing in this game mode is high enough that like we actually probably make more money if we try to fix that whole cycle. And my general philosophy for developing a game like this would be to reward players for doing the things you're supposed to be doing. Like, you should want to be in the end game in Rise of Kingdoms. The desire to migrate back should be the exception, not the norm, not the standard, not the thing you want to do, because the end game should be really, really fun, right? You should want to be there. And so I think the developers are understanding now the extent to which crystal tech is a barrier. But even if they wanted to get rid of it, I think they can't just snap their fingers because of the financial conundrum that they've gotten themselves into, because everybody gets fired if they make that call. I think that's how that would go. But I don't know, man. I don't work there. The fact is that Lilith is looking at crystal tech, and I really, really hope that they make big changes. Because when I polled my audience, that's all of you who have subscribed to the channel. And by the way, consider subscribing if you haven't already. I asked, like, hey, if we cut the combat buffs in half, would you still buy the crystal tech? But as of this exact moment that I'm recording, about 65% said, man, I don't buy any crystals. 9% didn't know what crystals were because they're still in the early game, KVK seasons 1 through 3. And 12% said, hey, I would buy the exact same amount of crystals I already buy if you cut the combat buffs in half. And 14% said, I would actually buy fewer crystals, but I would still buy some. So to make that a little more clear, it's nearly a 50-50 split. If you were to drop the combat effectiveness in half, 50% of people who buy crystals would buy the exact same amount, and 50% would actually buy less crystals. And this is why Lilith has probably been struggling to figure out how to attack crystal tech. Because like when they make a decision that means they make less money, like they have to offset it somewhere, or like a whole bunch of people are like just gonna get fired. So somewhere they've got to try to find the win here. And I hope that they do. And I honestly hope they just slash the tech in half and say, you know what, people will play the game for longer. And by virtue of being a customer with us for longer, we make more money. I hope they can find that conclusion somewhere in here. Man, just please. Make the end game a just like really, really fun place to be. That's got to be the key. If you enjoyed this video, throw a like on here, consider subscribing, leave your comments down below with how you would improve crystal technology. What would you do besides just getting rid of it? Okay? Because I get it. I understand that whole angle of attack. We've talked about that on the channel a lot, actually. But given that I don't think that can happen, what are things that you might suggest that could happen? And I'm open to it, right? And I pass along the cool stuff. So until next time, you have fun smashing the kingdom.